Hello and welcome to another episode of Words of Wisdom. This week we're joined by Sachin Ravi and Raghav Chakravarthy, the co-founders of Walnut Knowledge Solutions. Walnut Knowledge Solutions is a Bangalore-based company that uses quizzing to share stories with students. Walnut Knowledge Solutions, over the years, has earned many accolades, including a Limca Book of World Record. Walnut Knowledge Solutions.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
So, what got you two into quizzing in the first place? I think we'll start off with Raghav sir and then followed by Sachin sir.
Sure. Interesting question. So for me, I think largely it was my dad and my brother used to discuss a lot on the dinner table. Okay, so I think and my brother was quite curious. My parents are also were. I think one thing that they did was they bought us a World Book encyclopedia when we were very young. So my brother used to read a lot, and I used to always. I mean, I used to not read as much, but he used to read and ask a lot of questions to dad in on the dinner table, and they used to also just generally what is happening in the world. And that got me. I used to always ask follow-on questions. So I think that initially was where my interest in quizzing kind of started, and then my brother used to quiz, and he had won this competition with Presidency RT Nagar. I still remember. They lost out in the tiebreaker, and I remember the question that he had asked, and I knew the answer for that question. So I was like, oh, I might have a chance at this. So it was, I think the question on which they lost was what was the capital of Libya? And at that point in time, as I don't know, it's a third standard or second standard quiz, I remember it to be Tripoli. And yeah, so that was those memories. So he had like a nice cup that he had brought home. And we were in St. Paul's, and that was the initial this one. And there was three of them who went and took that award and in front of the assembly, and there was this fanfare and all that. So those were initially I should say, what got me to like, oh, this is very interesting and things like that. But then they were participating in quizzes, and there were a lot of mentors who really helped me through the process also. So I think that was the initial spark to get me into quizzing.
Right. So I'll take this one. So for me, when I go back and reflect backwards and connect the dots, I think there were three things really that got me onto this path of quizzing. Right. So I think number one was that even in I think back in 2003, right, I remember there was a diary that I was maintaining, and I used to have clippings of the Hindu Young World quiz that used to come on the Young World edition every week. So that was something that naturally took my interest. So going over those columns was one thing that that really kind of got me onto knowing or being a little more curious about knowing things and answering questions. There was always a consistent reading habit that I was fortunate to have my family members really kind of egg me on. So my grandfather used to take me to Gangaram's even when I was really small. So purchasing a Tintin or that was of course we purchased one every trip because they were very expensive at the time. So you probably purchased one every 6 to 8 months, and then of course the Amar Chatrakathas, etc. And the third was I had an uncle from the US who got down an Antarctica 1996 CD, and so that was something that. So I think all of those things I think came together in my fifth standard, where the Bonvita quiz contest they had a classroom edition. So I think they did grade-based eliminations that they did, and just by virtue of having read some stuff, if I'm not wrong, I remember there was a question on Captain Haddock or the name of a fish or something like that was there in those things. And by virtue of just reading some things, I happened to know the answers to those questions, and that just got me really overjoyed. The fact that somebody was rewarding me for just having read something and just having to have remembered it. I think that was my first recollection of a quiz, and out of the blue, really. So I think I was fortunate to win that in grade 5, and I remember being brought to the front of the classroom and people saying that, hey, this person won. So that was my first memory of a quiz, and I think all those things like a CD that my uncle purchased, my granny helping me cut newspaper cuttings of the Young World, and my grandfather purchasing these books for me. These three things I think got me in the track or the trajectory of reading, and then as a result, being rewarded for just knowing something or learning something for the sake of it. In my first quiz at 5th grade.
So moving on from that, how did Walnut start? Like, how did you guys come together and start the whole thing?
Right, Raghav, you want to take it? I'll take it after you.
All right. So, in fact, the birth of Walnut happened in the year 2011. We were in college, so we were a bunch of quizzers. Sachin, there were two of my seniors, Shubhajeep Jash and Sachin Chakravarthy. Both of them were also star quizzers from law school at that point in time. So, of course, there were shared interests of participating in quizzes, but also we were conducting quizzes for schools, and we had also conducted for RMN and LU and so on. So at that point in time, we were like, hey, you know what? If can we create a small setup? So we went and created a partnership firm in the year 2011. And we were conducting quizzes at that point in time. But what happened as a result afterwards was, I remember Sachin and we went to a school. We asked a close by school called Shamrao Kalmadi, which is in Pune, and Symbiosis School. Both of the schools, we went. We said we are interested in teaching students here. Would you be interested? I think they were also happy that we had some credentials of having won quizzes, and these kids were coming from college to actually teach children. And they said, we have a quiz club and we would like you to teach. And they said, we'll give you $500 a session. So that's how it started. So we, every day after school, Sachin and I used to divide our classes, used to go teach in Shamrao Kalmadi and Symbiosis School. And making pocket money out of teaching was something very, very gratuitous. And more so when these children, having the conversations with children really was useful. In fact, the children that we were working with at that point in time went on to win PCSIT Wiz and things later. And that was also, and I think that was I would say, the birth of how quizzing as a learning tool can be used to build context, to build a space for self-expression for children, all of that. So I think that was the time. Sachin, you can add on to.
Yeah, so I think the context as well is, so Raghav and me, we used to compete against each other in quiz competitions in Bangalore. So we knew of each other while we were in Bangalore. So Raghav used to represent St. Paul's and then Kumarans, and I used to represent National Public School in Ranagar. And so we knew of each other, and Raghav, of course, was a very prolific quizzer and used to be the one who used to really sweep a lot of these quizzes, and used to be like, hey man, that was a fairly competitive sort of affair at the time, but again, all in good spirit. So when we got to college, independently, we decided that we'll do law. Fortunate to win a bunch of quiz competitions across, in Pune, Bombay, across the country. And very quickly we said, hey, listen, it's great that we've been able to kind of benefit from quizzing in this manner, but there was always this itch to ask ourselves, what more can we do with quizzing? Is there a way to transfer or democratize this kind of knowledge or this benefit quizzing gave to us? So that itch really got us on to kind of say, let's make this a professional outfit. Let's go ahead, reach out to people and tell them that this is something that we seriously want to consider. So, and then of course we set out a partnership firm, reached out to colleges and schools nearby, and that's how really Walnut kind of kicked off. While I was in my third year or second year, if I'm not wrong, and Raghav was in his third year, fourth year. So Raghav being 1 year senior to me, so that was actually when we were in college and we started off with Walnut as a partnership firm at the time.
So, how was quarantine and the whole lockdown scene been for you? Especially with quizzing and hosting quizzes and all of that. What difference do you see personally? And you could add on more to what I asked.
Sure. So I'll take it, Raghav, and then yeah. So I think so for the business as such. So we've been a company that's focused on. So we have a quiz mastering side. We focus on conducting quizzes. So that's of course been at the heart of how we started out, but we've kind of morphed and kind of evolved into more of an education company, which has its roots in quizzing or has quizzing at the heart of what we do. So there is an education business, and there's a consequence that the lockdown has had on account of the lockdown, and then there's the quizzing business as well. So I'll address the first thing in terms of the education business. So we used to work with schools quite extensively. We used to conduct classes after school, but one shift that we made, and we were very fortunate on that count, is that we started conducting our classes online for school kids. And what do we do in these classes? We use games, activities, questions, and stories, quizzing as a means to be able to build a variety of 21st century skills, life skills, new age skills, whatever you want to kind of refer to it as, right? And so the thing is, since we shifted online at the beginning of this year at 2020, when the lockdown started, we were fortunate that because online classes became the norm, right? Everybody was at home, etc. So we saw a significant rise in our number of children signing up for our classes. And in terms of almost a 7x growth in terms of sales that we saw in terms of number of people signing up for the classes. But simultaneously to that, on the quizzing side, one thing that we started doing, that Raghav started shepherding, I think in the end of March, if I'm not wrong, is we started doing this thing called the QShala family quiz. And the QShala family quiz, I think we're very, very excited and privileged with the fact that we've had on an average at least 500, 600 families join in every Sunday ever since the lockdown started. At a peak, I think we had around 900 or even 1,000, if I'm not wrong, in one of those weekends in April. So that's been around 8,500 families that have joined us on every Sunday morning and afternoon for a session of quizzing. So it's children, it's parents, it's grandparents sometimes. So 3 generations sometimes sitting together and participating in quizzes. And a good old question at the heart of it, which makes people think, makes people work out the answer. That's what we stand for. I think a lot of people believe in that as well. So that's really kind of kicked off for us. So that's something that we continue to do. We've had over 13,000 plus registrations for that family quiz. On account of the quiz mastering business, one thing that, because we have spent so much time conducting online quizzes and conducting classes online, we shifted a lot of our conventional quizzes being conducted online as well. So now we do a lot of quizzes for corporates, and that again came from the family quiz as well. So families who would join would be parents working at companies. They would say, listen, come and do this for my company as well. So on the quiz mastering side, of course, there's been a bit of a hit in terms of physical events. I think across in any sector where there's any physical intervention, I think there's been that hit. But I think we were a little fortunate that we've had a lot of online exposure that's kind of helped us, if I might say, in this kind of unfortunate time.
Yeah. So just to kind of add on to that, I think for us, the family quiz has been truly a godsend in terms of, being able to engage the parents and the child together has been very heartwarming. In fact, the kind of feedback that we receive from these children, in fact, for us, about 70% of our base are repeated, families which are coming to the program. So that's extremely gratifying for any this one, right? Like families week on week. So we have about a good 400 to 500 families that are coming back. Almost, it's been about 15 quizzes that we've conducted, 15 editions of the quiz for the last 3 months, and we have had them back. So that's one thing. But what has been a hit, of course, is that we work with the government of Karnataka for the Swachh Bharat quizzes. It's a bilingual quiz that happens across all districts in Karnataka. So those quizzes that would require us to reach out to many tier 2 cities in Karnataka. That part of our leg is kind of right now very uncertain. We do not know how that will move, right? So that was one thing. So in terms of those businesses, we've been little. We've worked to see how we can reinvent it. But what is also exciting is a lot of clients are coming up with the online format to engage children and communities together. So that's quite interesting and exciting to come up with interesting formats that way.
Yeah, I think for
Since
us,
you
I
got
think
a
we're.
family. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying we're quite excited that we might possibly be the largest family quiz in the country, or possibly even the world. We don't know. We like to believe it's in the world.
Because we have families across, from London, Sweden, Norway, and the fact that it spread that way was something that for us also it was like a very interesting way to see how the word of mouth works and things like that. Yeah, so that's been quite exciting.
How did the whole concept of the family quiz even how did you get the idea? How did it start off?
So I think the origins of it is we've always wanted to do something to the family. See, I mean, in EdTech business, the bigger challenge has always been that you need to. The child is the one who likes the engagement of the quiz, right? And ultimately, the parent is the one who pays for the fees, right? So you need to get both of them on one platform to engage with them. Correct. So we've always wanted to create a property like that. But we had done some experiments of this nature when we had turned online. We turned online because a school called NAFL North in near the airport wanted our program, and Hemilata ma'am, the principal there, said, "Why don't you have QShala here?" And it was too far away for us, so we said, she only suggested, "Why don't you do it online?" Although we were very skeptical about it. So we did this in October and gave us a little bit of headway to kind of experiment. But after that, we had this showcase day where parents and children came together and they showcased what were the things that they liked and they were able to achieve. So that was the first inkling of, hey, there is an interesting engagement that we can bring out online with families together. And then we did one event for the Bangalore schools group on Facebook. We were anyway, because we knew that this had a very interesting engagement, we did this quiz, but this was done offline, right? Before that, we did one teaser online quiz, and then we did an offline family quiz on the Bangalore School Expo. It's a big community of Bangalore schools in Bangalore. And I think that was the initial first two tests that we had done, right? And then during the lockdown, we said, what is the other ways to like reach out to parents? We said, why don't we do the family quiz? So we had, so the first family quiz had about 50 families, and the next went up from 450 to 1,150, and that was how more families started coming in. Yeah.
Ayush?
Yeah. So, how did the idea for QShala come about? What was the thought process behind setting up, coming up with, QShala, and maybe even the name? How did you come about it?
Right. Sachin, you want to give it a shot?
Yeah, sure. I can take a stab at it. So I think if I go back to what I said earlier as well, Ayush and Varsha. So the idea was working with children, trying to take the learnings and the benefits that quizzing gave to us, and kind of present it in a manner that appeals to a bigger audience than just who might conventionally be a quizzer. So in a general classroom, you might have not everybody who immediately lights up when you say a quiz, right? But quizzing is it's an Indian phenomenon. You have KBC, you have a lot of these things that everybody naturally take to. So of course, these are things we kind of put together later. But at that time for us, it was just very singular. Quizzing was something that was extremely beneficial to us. It opened our minds to know a variety of topics, the breadth of topics, the breadth of knowledge that we were able to gain by just reading and being curious about things. We really wanted to package it into an experience and see how we can build out these kind of experiences for school children. So that's how really we started it off as Quizshala. So the initial origin or the way we started off the program was Quizshala. And this was, I think at the time of, we started all of this working full time when Raghav quit his job. I quit my job. This was back in 2014 when we had started it. But through the course of 2013, 2014, we were thinking of names, thinking of what might be a good way to be able to articulate what we're trying to do. So we always thought of ourselves as a school, right? So we thought a quiz school or a QShala, because there was, you have the word quiz and you think of different words and plays you can have. So QuizShala felt very natural to us in terms of, it's a school of quizzing, right? You're asking questions, you're learning from questions, you're making more questions and such and such. But over the course of time, over the last 6 years, the program has evolved to consistently had children who don't only come for the quizzes aspect of it. There's a lot of activities we have. So because it's so open to different children who might not necessarily say that, hey, I want to participate and win quiz competitions, but someone who just wants to know because they like knowing things, right? So that's when we kind of evolved the program from QuizShala to QShala. And we liked that shift and we asked children about it. And a lot of the words that the Q stands for, when we thought of it and parents, when children resonated with that, we felt like that was the best name to take, because QShala here could stand for, a Q could stand for a quiz, a Q could stand for a question, a Q could stand for a quest or a journey of learning, or most importantly, Q can stand for curiosity with a Q, right? So it takes these various things that what we think QShala is, that it's a journey of learning, it's a journey of questioning, or what we'd like to believe to be lifelong learning. So that's how we thought of the name, that's what we thought of the experience. And it started with 2 schools. Raghav went to his alma mater, I went to my alma mater. So the principals there, they were like, what are these 2 young boys who are lawyers who come and stopped everything and started with this? So we should be very fortunate that they actually gave us that break. They said, okay, listen, okay, go ahead and go do a demo. We'll see how many parents will sign up. And so we did a demo in NPS Indranagar. We did a demo in Kumarans. And I think in that second semester of 2014-15, I think is when we had a first batch of children. So I remember, I think we had 41 children in that first batch in NPS. And I think we had around the same number in Kumarans.
Yeah, we had about 76 children in our first batch of. Also, one other thing was, one more school was TVS Academy. These are 3 of, I can't forget all the first 3 schools where we started our QShala program initially, and a very, very special batch of children. Most of them stayed with us for a good 3-4 years, and now most of them are passed out. They're I think just about your age, in colleges and schools, right? So 6 years, right? So a very special batch of children in our first batch. So it was Sri Kumaran's NPS and TVS Academy. All,
This
very
is in Hosur, by the way. So we used to travel to Hosur every once a week for classes. So fantastic time though. We had an incredible principal who kind of really put and helped us package it and put it together.
Yeah, all of them, like Deepa ma'am from Kumarans, you had Srividya Akka, we call her Akash, the principal of TVS Academy, and
Shanta Chandran ma'am from
Chandran ma'am,
NPS and Ramadan.
of NPS. So all of them, I mean, all of it was, we went there, we said we're doing this, and they were gracious enough to give us that opportunity. I think, yeah, we're grateful for that.
You guys did this crazy thing of conducting a quiz in Antarctica, which I was like so shocked when I found out. So what was the whole process? How did the idea come about? And how was it conducting the thing and everything? Tell us about it.
Right. Raghav, you take this?
Yeah, so the quiz was actually conducted by one of our team members then. His name is Shubhajit Dash. So when we started the partnership firm, we were a 4-member team. Shubho, as we call him, and he was part of that expedition to Antarctica. Because he was going there, and it just struck us that, why don't we conduct a quiz as part of that expedition through him? Right, and that's the seeding of the idea. We spoke to Shubhadeep, and he was like, "Hey, this could be something that could be an interesting way to engage them on climate change issues." Because see, for us, what we think is that questions and stories are at the heart of building curiosity. Narratives are a great way to engage people, resonate with issues, right? So it was a set of about 25 questions that we created, and Shubhadeep conducted it. It was on the Antarctica Peninsula when the quiz was conducted. It was in the ship Endeavour, and that was when it was conducted. So interestingly, that had delegates from across the world. So one of them was Mr. Nigel Payne, who is the BBC Learning and Development former head. And he gave us a review which said that, how Walnut had conducted, essentially using quizzing and stories as an engagement to build context on issues such as climate change and global warming and Antarctica and so on, right? Interestingly, there was also an IS officer from India who was there. A young IS officer who's very gracious enough to give us an opportunity to actually conduct QShala sessions in 2 tribal schools in Kodagu. She was the district CEO there, and so for 1 week, I stayed in very close to a village, Kodagu, and these were tribal schools in the hinterland of the forest, right? And it was like the edge of the forest. A very memorable experience. We used a lungi as the screen, and we projected it in the government schools. So it was a 1-week program that we conducted. So one of the offshoots of the Antarctica quiz was this, right? And Robert Swan, who is the man behind the 2041 expedition, was gracious enough to give us a glowing feedback on the fact that how the quiz was absolutely engaging and so on. So that really kept our spirits up. And later we said, hey, we probably may be the first company to conduct a quiz in Antarctica, and that's how we applied for Limca. And we had a friend, Naveen and Rajiv Kondapalli, who said, hey, you guys should try Limca. And that's when that happened. And since we conducted a quiz in Antarctica and said, hey, you know what, there was one quiz question there, which was very interesting. So supposedly Metallica happens to be the only band in the world to have conducted a quiz in all the continents of the world. So that was a quiz question in the Antarctica set that we had created. So that was like, hey, you know what? If we had conducted a quiz in Antarctica, then why don't we conduct a quiz in all the continents also and try to get a Limca Book of Record? So that happened, and we conducted a quiz in MIT in the US. One of my batchmates from Kumarans was a PhD student there, and he was gracious enough to really arrange for a quiz there. We conducted a quiz in Hertie. So Shubhadeep conducted a quiz in Hertie School of Public Policy, and I conducted a quiz when I was there in Berlin for a pub quiz there. And then one of our advisors, Mr. Suresh Kumar, he conducted a quiz on his vacation in Chile, his school in Chile, and in Deakin University in Australia. And we had another friend of ours from a team who conducted a quiz in a startup incubator center in Africa, and that's how Uganda, and that was how the second Limca Book of Record, which came about, was the company to conduct a quiz on all the continents of the world. So a little bit of. By the way, interesting funda, right? Like the expedition is actually called the 2041 expedition, the Antarctica expedition. Do you guys know how? Why? Any guesses? So Robert Swan, the person who runs that expedition, right, happens to be the first man to walk to the North Pole and the South Pole, right? And it's become his deep mission to really bring awareness on the wilderness of Antarctica and really to, make people aware of the climate change issues there and to really save it from any commercial exploitation. And he takes this global delegates to Antarctica for it and so on. Right. So 2041 is the year in which the Antarctica Treaty is coming back to the UN for renegotiation. So his point is that before 2041, to get as many people aware of, the greatest wilderness that's there for us to save. And he does that. So so a little bit of trivia there for you guys.
Quite interesting. So it's been, I think, quite a nice journey for all of you. And I'm sure there are many memorable moments, but is there one standout, most memorable moment that, you could share with us? The one that is, that stands out from the rest.
Even it might be the smallest thing, just that it's like, oh my God, that happened. Anything.
So, Sachin,
I have one. I think I have one. I think Raghav will go first, and then I'll go with mine.
There are many,
Yes.
many. But let me tell you one which I distinctly remember is we were fortunate enough to get a break to conduct the first Prajavani Quiz Championship along with. This happened right after the big contract that we got was the Prajavani Quiz Championship, and it was conducted bilingual, Kannada and English. And we traveled across Karnataka. And for me, being a Kannadiga, being in Bangalore or in and around Mysore, you have a certain view of Karnataka. But when you travel the length and breadth of our state, really you understand there are different worlds by itself, right? And that was very heartening. But this happened in Kalburgi, where we were there and we were conducting the quiz. We finished the quiz. And after that, there was this headmaster who came with his children and said, quiz bolo channagittu in Kannada, and effectively saying, I really liked the quiz, sir, today. And the children said that, they were recounting about some questions that they had studied and that had come and they were happy and all of that. And they also were like, the headmaster was like, sir, we woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning the previous night to go. The students stayed with him in his house, took a bus, 3-hour journey from there to come to Kalburgi. And they freshened up, stayed in the bus stand in the morning, and they happened to come to the quiz. So that was when, like, truly, the work that we do, impacting these lives, or even just a sense of confidence. You know what? Like, if I remember, a simple answer that you've gotten right can give you so much of confidence, right? It's just believing in yourself to say that, right? So I could see what the work we do, how is it impacting these children? And if one of these children go on to pursue their passions of their life, or even critically think of the decisions that they're making in their lives, or it enabled them to read something interesting or look at some different point of view, that would be extremely gratifying for us. So that was one moment when the work that we are undertaking, every question that goes out, the responsibility we have, kind of was very this one. So that was one. And we do this quiz called Agastya for Agastya Foundation. That's another, this one, right? With Texas Instruments, it's a science and technology quiz, again, bilingual, Kannada and English, across the state. The finals, they gave away prize money, which I've never seen in any big quiz, right? Like, the school got 1.5 lakhs, the children got money, the teachers got money and all that. And it was that moment when in the finals there was this a team with two girls and one boy. I remember them going and crying and hugging the teacher, saying that, "Ma'am, we were able to do this." So for me, that these children, and I remember this team was from Kanakpura, so and winning that quiz and feeling so. Having achieved it at that level, right? And what kind of confidence that would give for them to take on bigger challenges, right? That was very, very and just being a small catalyst in this scenario was very, very gratifying for me.
Yeah, so I think I go back to the same memory. For me, it was the Prajavani quiz that. This was in 2014. So this was in the end of 2014. We started discussing working with the Prajavani team in say September, October of 2014, and we planned for this to happen in 2015 January. So it's quite interesting. So at that time, Raghav and me would applied for this thing called the Jagrati Yatra, which is this thing that the Tatas conduct. It's like a train journey across the country for you to be able to get a sense of how real India is, right, in terms of what's happening on the ground. So rather almost in like some stroke of whatever it is. So the quiz which was conducted was scheduled exactly at the time of the Jagrati Yatra. So we had to kind of forego our participation in the Yatra. We had paid up a certain amount, but we kind of said, hey, we'll have to take a refund on that because we're not going to be able to do it. But for me personally, I think the entire aspect of creating a property that is benefiting an organization that is reaching out to people in such massive numbers. And it was just Raghav and me who we were thinking of the content, putting the content together, going ahead and conducting it turn by turn, traveling in a car with one of the members of the director's office from the Prajavani group. So the entire journey going across Karnataka in like a 10-day span. So we covered like 10 districts, if I'm not wrong, in Karnataka that we did, and then came back to Bangalore, did the semi-finals and then the grand finale. That entire journey of what we did in those 10 days across Karnataka for the Prajavani Quiz Championship, I think that was our Jagrati Yatra to kind of set us in terms of what we started doing for Walnut. So that I think is that memory of putting something together and seeing that impact, like Raghav mentioned in those two anecdotes. That's one moment. We've had an incredible amount of benefit, and in hindsight, of course, there's a lot of things you can look back and say, which we've been really fortunate and had a great time at. But this is one memory that kind of really I go back to because it was all sorts of challenges, right? Because that's the first time you're doing something. It's a big project and it's a media company, so there's press and this and that. So it was just an incredible time at that time for us to put this together and make it happen for these kids and for the brand.
So for like in terms of Walnut, like you all started off as, four of you and all of that. What was that one thing that set the company off, like a big break kind of a thing, if I can call it? Just that one thing that like blew the company up or something like that. Is there anything like that?
That's interesting. It's an interesting question. So I'll take a stab at it, and then I think so for us, when we started conducting QShala, or when it was known as QShala, we realized that this is something that works, right? So the immediate jump that we made is started targeting more schools and more people to join us in terms of working with children, etc. So I'm not specifically going to say that there was one big bang moment that kind of just blew up and made things a little differently. Maybe it's not happened yet. Perhaps it will happen in some time. But I think that concerted growth that we saw over the course of us going from 4 people, who then it was just Raghav, me, then 3 people, 4 people, and then we went to 10, 11, 12, and now we're a 22-member team. And of course, these are the full-time staff. And then we have a lot of people working with us as consultants, part-time, etc. That number possibly is easily in the double digits, closer towards 50, 60. So when I think back and realize that we're able to kind of work with so many people together and we've had this much, I think these many people work with us and have the benefit of so many things happening. I think that's really what I go back to. So I don't think there was one specific sort of thing that kicked it. But yeah, I think in the last couple of months, the shift to online, right? And the shift to online classes, perhaps if I were to kind of take that specific instance, that jump of classes and kids signing up for online classes, that was quite an exhilarating moment for us to see that. I can tell you the difference. So before March, for us to be able to get a child and a parent on a Zoom call or a Zoom class to be able to explain to them how they mute, unmute themselves, and even convincing them that an online class is something that they should consider. And now I think kids just instinctively know when to mute, unmute, and it's that kind of proliferation, right? So I think that's the kind of thing that I would say is things I would reflect back on.
Yeah. So I think I would resonate with that because there are multiple moments which have actually led to, and it's also very serendipitous. Yeah, like, so for example, we do this quiz for constitutional law, history and politics for the Center for Law and Policy Research, right? And one of the IS officers saw this as an ad in Events High and actually turned up to watch that quiz as an audience member. And he got in touch with us the next day saying, hey, I was part of the quiz and I really liked it. And I would like to explore a pilot project for you guys, as part of, he was heading the Swachh Bharat mission for the urban at that point in time. And he said, I would be interested. He was a quizzer. And that led to us getting first we did 3 pilots, showed the benefit of the project. We had to do all of that. And then we got the, all the state project and so on. And that was like, one big, I mean, the scale of just the government to reach out to people is just humongous, right? Like every district, and getting the power of the government to mobilize people is just, I got to see it firsthand. Right, so that was one. And the second, of course, is like, I mean, we've raised a small angel round and now we're going online, and that and for us always scale was a problem, right? Because we used to do these classes, actually go out, and our facilitators used to go and do it offline, right? To scale this to more number of children was always the dream, right? How can we take the experience that this has for more number of people? How can we impact that? So now with going online, it gives us that opportunity to reach out to more number of children. Right. So that is also because, I mean, the kind of growth that we saw in the last, the 3 months was another, there's a pull from the market, right? Previously, we used to go and say, hey, take the course. It kind of reversed, wherein a lot more people saying, hey, I want to keep my child engaged meaningfully. I think QShala, a lot of people have said nice things about you guys. I want to try this. So that became this one. So that shift. And we're seeing that exciting times, and also the family quiz, right? Like for us,
it kind of coincided with the family quiz simultaneously in terms of the growth that we saw there.
So that I think is few milestones, so to say, in our zone.
So is there anything exciting coming up for us to see? Is there something you would like to share here very secretly?
So it's a secret for a reason. So let's.
Yes, true. But so
we're trying some interesting formats. So hopefully, if do a pilot, if it works out, we think that that format could be something that could be more inclusive. And just generally, we've been working with a whole lot of teachers. We have about 650 teachers that we're working with, doing webinars on their challenges of going online. And a few things that we see as problem points that could be solved meaningfully could lead to more adoption. So let's see if we are able to kind of make an intervention that solves that. That's quite exciting. Wherein teachers will be more empowered to conduct their classes without too many hassles that they are presently having. So that's something that's in the annual. So that's that, and we may be doing some projects with a couple of interesting people, and if that comes through, that'll be something that we would be looking forward to with some media companies in India. So let's see that.
This might be a weird question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No worries. So I think so for us, I think the platform, so there's a lot of technology that we're kind of investing in at this moment, and so I'm actually, this is like a open call really. So whoever this is going to reach out to, or whoever is interested, we're looking out for a good bunch of people who are interested in technology, who are interested in who have some chops in coding, and or even business functions as well. So we're always on the lookout for people who are interested in kind of working in a startup and also having a environment of quizzing as at the heart of what has led to doing things for us. So that's really something that we're building, and that's really what the angel money is being raised for, and we're reaching out to more investors as well. And so yeah, that's really the what I might say is the next big thing. And anybody watching this, whenever they watch it, guys, we're always on the lookout for people who are interested in solving the problem of education, or the opportunity of education, really. And yeah, uh, whoever's interested, just drop us an email, drop us a note. The credentials, etc., we'll post it at the end of this, and then you guys can just give us a call, even if it takes it, and that's fine too.
So the question I have now might be like a weird question to answer, because even I don't know what the answer is going to be.
Sure.
What does an average day at working at Walnut with you guys look like? How, like, what is the work culture or whatever I can call it?
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think it flows from the previous thing that we said, if anybody wants to work with us, right? So so I'll take a stab at it. So we've been remote. I mean, every company is remote now, but we started, of course, mid-March onwards. We realized that once health and safety is of a concern for people traveling, especially in Bangalore, and it's quite taxing to even travel, as much as it is in Bangalore, right? So in mid-March, and we've practically been remote ever since. So on a given day, if one person is working with us, they're by themselves that they've signed, working on a specific piece. Right? So one thing that we have our employees share every day in the morning is what we refer to as an OC. An OC is your schedule or your to-do list for that specific day, along with what time of the day that you've allocated for it. See, in the 8 or 9 hours that you're working with us, you're kind of spacing out what you're going to be doing. You share that with the team completely, so that everybody knows what you're working on. You have a bunch of meetings that happen. We have our reviews, we have our scrum meetings, we have constant meetings, not too many, I hope, that are held, so that there's context that's built. And it depends on what kind of function you're leading. If you're working in sales, you're going to be running after specific calls and targets around that. If you're working on content and product, you're creating experiences. So it depends upon the kind of role, but you're going to be at home, of course, doing these things. And we're all, of course, we have this thing called a chai break that we have from 5 to 5:30, because sitting in front of a screen is quite strenuous, right? Because it's only looking at the screen. So we still, of course, look at the screen from 5 to 5:30, but we play games. We just catch up. It's like a water cooler equivalent sort of moment that we have. So that's really the kind of schedule that one person might have at Walnut if they're working on the QShala product and QShala program.
So just to kind of do that, right? Like, so in the chai time is when we all become guinea pigs for what experiences we really want the children to go through, right? Like interesting games that we are working on. And so considering we are a quizzing company and game-based company, a lot of games are played during that time. A lot of feedback is shared during that time. So that is one. And the other part of it is, see, because we are generating these experiences. So let's say we are conducting a quiz. There is a lot of brainstorming, thinking about, hey, what is this interesting thing that I want to, introduce children to, right? From history, literature, music, arts, sciences. So each one has their own sense of, project that they're working on from the content team. So there is a little bit of, reading and connecting and really distilling it into a learning experience, right? And that learning experience also needs to be tested. It's not in your mind, right? Like, it's not only inward, it needs to ultimately be meaningful. So testing that, getting inputs, and a lot of our team members also teach, right? So online classes. So a large part of our classes are also about, actually having teaching sessions with children, right? So a part of being part of QShala is a lot of teaching, a lot of brainstorming through interesting content work, and of course, as Sachin mentioned, different roles have a different thing. Right? Like, I mean, that's the other side of it. Like, your sales, you're talking to parents constantly and getting feedback. We have a mentoring team which is talking to children and finding out what are the experiences they liked, what they where they need for potpourri of things. But I think one thing which is very common is, I think as a company, we're very curious. And if we are not curious, we can't build curious experiences. And building that as a muscle internally requires us to have rituals that enable us. Chai time is one such ritual that enables us.